We are going live to talk about all the ways I make Kate and Carrie's life great, but also to talk about television from this week. And you know what? I know we talked about this 2 weeks ago, but it's really hit me today watching multiple finales in the span of one day that these last 2 weeks, but this last week in general, has had a ton of finales and a ton of like really good quality television coming to a close at a time of year where we normally don't see like heavy hitting finales. And yes, I am including the Love is Blind finale as a heavy hitting finale. So I'm very excited to chat about this with you, Kate and Carey. But before we get into all that, number one, how have you guys been? Number two, do you have any news to talk about?
Kate, you go first.
Um, okay, yeah, I've been pretty good. I actually was recently looking for my news list, couldn't find it, don't know where it went, it just disappeared. So I can't remember if we did mention this last week, but we did get news that Henry Cavill will no longer be playing Geralt of Rivia, and we have to go through the process of watching him be recast. So he's been recast with Liam Hemsworth. We shall see how that goes and what that bodes for the rest of the show at large.
Truly RIP to that show because with all due
Yeah,
respect, which is like not that much respect, I don't think Liam is a great job for recast, like a great recasting choice. Pardon my grammatical errors there. And more so, I just don't think they should have recast it. Was it really worth it? Could they not have just A, continued and cut it off when Henry Cavill needed to leave, or even continue the show without Gerald?
yeah. I don't know. There has been we've had commentary on about this show before about how it could be improved. We do like certain aspects of it. We both Yennefer defenders till we die, but I think the one thing that most everybody could always consistently agree on was how well casted it was,
Yeah.
and it was so well led by Cavill because of his like very vocal passion for this character, for this franchise, and whatever. And then you could also consistently see his character being underwritten.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a thing you could foresee coming if you were watching enough of the interviews and stuff he was giving about it. But um, it is kind of sad, and especially with him being the heart of that show and kind of the voice of the fans within the production of it, it's hard to see how it's going to succeed past this. I kind of agree with your stance that if we're going to continue to do this, maybe we reinterpret what The Witcher itself means, and instead of following The Witcher Geralt, it's going to be just following The Witcher as in a new Witcher, and how that new guy interacts with pre-existing characters. And I think that's their best bet,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah, I agree. No, I hopefully that's the path they take. Any other news for this week?
That's all I've got.
Well, I wouldn't call it news because everyone knows it, but Black Panther 2, Black Panther 2, Black Panther 2. I tell you what, I I don't know how and when I want to go see this movie because I don't know if my emotions can take going to watch it in a crowded theater with
Yeah.
people. I feel like I need to go watch it in a dark room.
Yeah.
Um, but yes, incredibly looking forward to that. And it came to mind because you were talking about um, casting or recasting, and the fact that they did not recast T'Challa, I think was the right move, and it will certainly inform this movie a significant and great deal. So I am incredibly looking forward to that. So that's my news.
Yeah. I can't wait to see it. I saw the first one in theater and I'll see this one in theater, but I am also waiting it out just a little bit. Also, when I was looking for tickets, it was pretty difficult, which is always great. But well, I have just a couple notes of what I'm going to call news, but I don't think anybody cares except me. Uh, number one, the Bachelor in Paradise reunion special filmed, and this is going to be so exciting. The longest season of Bachelor in Paradise in Bachelor in Paradise history. It's about twice the length of a normal season. I already want to die. It's entirely too much. And also, they're tacking on a reunion, which, like, I'm happy because then there's like this additional, like, anybody that does get engaged is for sure going to be like broken up and hating each other by the reunion. So that's going to be fun for everybody. But that's been a little thing. They just released the like schedule of how many episodes are left, and there's like 5,000. I will be unwell by the end. On brighter news, on like mentally healthy news, the New York Times cooking Thanksgiving series released its trailer, and I think to most people the series of words I just said will sound incredibly foreign. What do you mean New York Times cooking Thanksgiving series trailer? But I care. I watched the trailer as if it's a blockbuster movie, and I've been having a great time with the series of videos so far. In my defense, it is better quality entertainment than most TV on air right now. So there's that. So let's dive into some things that were released this week. And as the title of tonight's live would suggest, we do have, I mean, we always have a pretty female focused, agenda, but we've got a very female focused agenda today. And right up there at the top is Enola Holmes 2. Now, Kate, I know you've watched it. I have as well. Carey, have you watched it? And did you watch the first one?
No, in fact, I need you guys to sort of, I don't want to say sell me on it because it's something that I know I wanted to watch. I just haven't. So uh, let's go.
Let's go. All right, Kate, the task before us is pitch this movie to what might not be the target demographic. So let me start with maybe a leading question. Is this movie centered around a teen girl for teen girls?
It's not for teen girls, but I think it's more for a general audience, which is a surprisingly pleasant way that they've made this movie. It's not an adult movie, it's not a kids movie, it's just a general audience film, and I think that's a great approach to the way that they're going to tell the story. That's how I see it, at least.
I would agree with you. So there's an interesting topic covered in the second movie that really did actually start to make me question what the target demographic is. Now, let me echo what you just said. It is not for teen girls. Absolutely. We see a teen girl behaving like an older teen girl. Okay. And by like the Sherlockian England standard, she's, like 6 months away from getting married. So perhaps more mature than or forced to be more mature than like your typical 17-year-old right now in 2022. So that in and of itself kind of creates this is both teen and also young adult, and also maybe where a lot of people are at in their 30s, where she's early career, she's setting up her own, detective shop, and she's being her own boss, and she's trying to go to, we're vaguely seeing an audience that overlaps up to where probably a lot of people right now are in like the early 30s. But the topic that they covered in the second movie, is workers' rights. And it is an extremely politically charged approach without this being like an annoyingly political movie that feels so 2022, to where if we watched it again in 3 years, we'd be like, oh my God, that is so obviously created to be released right before the 2020 election. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't come across that way. It is distinctly looking at an actual historical event and kind of showing this workers' rights strike that centers female workers, specifically poor female workers, specifically poor and marginalized female workers. And then we also see class differences across our different characters. We see differences in age and like social mobility across our different characters, including no spoilers, but social mobility is even addressed with regard to our villain or villainess. Who knows? Who knows? So,
Mhm.
in doing so, they do broaden this age range where they pretty openly address things that I'm not sure a 17-year-old would really fully digest, even if they do appreciate the movie. What do you think, Kate?
I it's kind of a weird liminal space that I would exist in, thinking back to when I would have watched this if I were 17 still,
Mm.
because I was very familiar with the events, like the historical events covered in it, and then the science aspects that were given as hints and clues that kind of gave credence to their research about the historical event. I was very aware of, but I do have to give them a lot of respect for how they presented it. Whereas it was for me watching very clearly, I knew who did it very quickly. I knew what was going on very quickly, the references they were making, while still making it enjoyable. But for an audience that didn't know the the, the history, the event that they were, you still got to go on this ride, this journey, and discover. And they also decided not to undercut um, who actually ended up like who actually led the charge
Mm-hmm.
in history. So there was a point where I was worried that they were going to basically let the team, the main characters, be the reason that this company was stopped. And I was pleasantly surprised that that's not how it ended. They ended up still having the walkout, and they still ended up having this very prominent young woman who is historically known for being the person that led this revolution against this company and stood up for women's rights and workers' rights within this field. And so I think the great thing about how they did that was for an informed audience and a uninformed audience, it has a lot of nuance that you can pick up on and enjoy and learn from, while it's not being like you're preached to or you're being told how to think, which was a really great way that they handled the story.
Absolutely. I think that anytime you have something based on historical events or, whether it be directly, and there were a lot of direct things pulled, or indirectly, and there's a lot of some indirect or random side stories added to this, you do run that risk of like you're telling something people already know about. You're telling something that's pretty easy to figure out. And rather than trying to further murkify the mystery, they leaned into the fact that there's some things you would already perhaps know, and there's some things you might not know, or you might not know how it'll end, or you might not know how, like obviously it deals with workers' rights. So we see things like strikes, we see things like walkout, or we touch on these ideas. You might not know how that could be climactic. Because if you think of something like a walkout or a strike, that could be something that is dangerous and occurs in the middle of the movie, right before conflict. That could be something that is financially a struggle that occurs at the beginning of the movie and creates ongoing tension. Or it can be something that's climactic and it occurs at the end of the movie in order to cause resolution or some feeling of celebration. And the way they chose at which point in the story, things that you knew were going to come, but you didn't know how they would happen, the way they chose that, I thought was really interesting from a storytelling perspective. And we do also get to see, I mean, I'll say a lot of characters, most characters are not teen girls. We have Enola. She has some friends slash clients that she encounters, but we see Henry Cavill as Sherlock
Mm-hmm.
Holmes, her older brother. We see Helena Bonham Carter as her mother, the mother of Sherlock and Enola. We see a lot of, older characters who are seasoned actors. Not that Henry Cavill's old, but he's older than Millie Bobby Brown,
Mm-hmm.
right? So there's this nice multi-generational perspective. We see characters like Edith, who are something of maternal figures as well to her, and also like fighters of their own right. That I think has been really interesting. And they definitely took the stance, and I know we're kind of jumping to the what happens next, but did you feel they took the stance that they're for sure getting a third movie?
I I hope so. That's kind of the tone that they set, that this was the first movie was a proof of concept that, as both as a movie franchise as well as within the story, yes, she can successfully be a detective. This one was more of her gritting her feet in establishing her name besides the Holmes, like under her brother. And the finishing scene with her and her brother, I think really was a tender and very beautiful scene between siblings, but I also think is a really great nod to the audience. Like, it'd be great, right? Like, you guys would like that, right? Because we would love to do that, right? And so I think that it was a really multifaceted scene that did that, and I thought that was really special. And I thought that last scene did set up the third, definitely.
Mm. One of the things that I found really pleasing about the movie and made me kind of want to watch it again, and one thing about me, I very rarely rewatch anything. Okay, it's one and done, even with something I really enjoy. But something that made me want to rewatch it is how well things like the sets, including Sherlock Holmes' apartment and the sort of tricky, cool things there, the sets like the outdoor London, the sets like, spoilers, a ball and a dancing scene and costumes and all that. How just visually pretty this all is. We definitely see the Netflix budget sitting here, don't we?
Yes, yeah, it's a beautifully shot movie. It's interesting because this whole past 2 weeks I have basically only been consuming media pertaining to Victorian lady detectives. Like, it's a
Yes.
really specific niche. Like, it's a lot of the same. And the great thing about the different flavors that it is, that this brings a very, even though they do handle very dark concepts in this series, it is very brightly lit. It is very hopeful. I would say it's very refreshing, which is very darkly contrasted or steeply contrasted to the very dark tones that Victorian mysteries tend to bring up.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was a really nice shift. And that allowed them to show like a really beautiful set and amazing acting and just a lot of comedy in an otherwise dark situation.
I fully agree. Well, Carey, has anything caught your ear or mind? Is this something you feel like you would enjoy watching?
So two questions, right? I don't, and strangely
Mhm.
enough, for some strange reason I was thinking that this was like a series and not a movie.
Mm,
So that's like the first thing. So the question I have is how long are these movies? What, 2 hours,
like
220?
2 hours. Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, I sort of like consuming like my movies pretty quickly in that situation. But the question I have is, if it was, do you think if it was a series, how would it be different, perhaps? Or would it be much different at all?
That's a good question. So I have one tiny thing which immediately comes to mind, not to be lame and make everything about romance, but I'm a bit of a one trick pony. The way they handle romance, which is very like fluffy and nice and age appropriate and not a major plot
Mhm.
point, but I think the way they have handled the romance throughout these past two movies would be greatly different if it was a TV show where they were needing to kind of have things at a certain pace. There's been elements of the romance that has been more of a slow burn in here where they've really kind of tampered things down and not moved things too far. Because, for example, in the first movie, I don't think they had quite made the decision of like, these two characters that are slightly flirty, we're definitely going to keep this guy in for the entire Enola Holmes series. I think that was still a bit uncertain. And then in the second movie, we see things kind of move forward in some ways, but not in others. And I just think you would get this more even, gradual slow burn. Right now, we've got less of an even gradual thing. It's a little roller coastery. I don't know. Kate, what do you think?
I Yeah, I liked what they've done with the romance
Yeah, me too.
because it's kind of the cute, wholesome, fluffy, as it were. Uh, I think there'd be some advantages to having it in a series and disadvantages to having it in a series. I think very distinctly remember watching the first one. I was disappointed it wasn't a series. After the second one, as much as I loved it, I think I actually like the second movie more. I'm glad it's not a TV show. I'm glad, and this is a very rare comment of mine. I typically vote more towards make it a series. Um, I'm glad it has a movie form
Yeah.
because I think it fits the movie pacing so well and the movie scale so well. I think it really benefits from that because as we're going to talk about later, compared to like Miss Scarlet, who has very tight knitted, typically within a same city block, mysteries. They have a much smaller budget. While it still looks beautiful, they can't have the big chase scenes and the bit of explosions and the sprawling uh, feel that you get in Enola Holmes. And if you converted it to a series, I'd worry that some of that mystique and just overall ambiance would be lost.
Mm-hmm.
And lastly, I'm assuming and would expect that, like, tell me about Enola Holmes's character, because I'm just assuming that she's not just like, hey, say a younger female Sherlock Holmes, right? So tell me a little bit about her.
There's a few character traits of hers that come to mind. So she definitely reads as somebody who had to parent herself very young. And sure enough, we do find that she is somebody who had to parent herself very young. So we do see this kind of mixed level of maturity where at some points she will come across as like a fully, like fledged adult who's had to like care for herself throughout the world for the last several years, and then sometimes there'll be this emotional immaturity where she's quite insecure about a particular emotional connection, or she's easily emotionally swayed by, like a child needing help or somebody needing a hero or whatever, where she doesn't have the level of experience with strong, stable emotional connections that were always there. So emotionally kind of both mature and immature, depending on whether we're talking about her work and work ethic versus if we're talking about her familial, romantic, and friendly level of intelligence. She's also quite a good puzzle solver. They do differentiate her type of puzzle solving skills from Sherlock Holmes. There's a Venn diagram, there's a lot of overlap, but she will kind of think things through from a, you know, mystery unravel perspective, but they do make it clear that maybe she's not always as good at reading people as he is. They do show him to be much older, much more mature, much more streetwise. She is more willing to actually physically fight than him. So she's been trained in, some martial arts sort of things. So that's a big difference between her and Sherlock, is she will actually physically get into a fight if need be. And she is not fearless. We do see her be fearful from time to time. She'll act within the fear, but she is not your like plucky, fearless, charge into the fire at all, costs, never assume the word. Like there's not a level of optimism. And there's one moment in the latest movie where she finds herself essentially in jail. No spoilers, but she finds herself essentially in jail in a fairly dangerous situation. And we see her assuming the worst, not at all being hopeful and not being like sad, despondent, and depressed, but actually being quite fearful and anxious because she knows bad things could be about to happen. So there is this like interesting ability to read situations better than she can read people. Kate, what do you think?
Um, I very much agree with how you're suggesting it, but I also would say she kind of, not necessarily in her person specifically, but more of she walks the line of sometimes very mature, very independent, and then the moments of immaturity and still needing parenting that we always see in like characters like Joe March or
Yeah.
Anne of Green Gables, where she's still walking that line of she's an adult, but only technically. Um, she can survive in the big bad world, but she still wants her mom to come and hug her and tell her like to like sit your shoulders straight and go get the boy, also, while you also take down the evil company. So that is kind of where I think the energy of how they've approached this character is. I just with more of a, she's going to be the most successful detective in 5 years' time. She just has to get the emotional maturity behind her.
Dig it. I may have to, when I have some free time, give it a shot, give it a check.
Mm.
There are some excellent side characters in the movie who I think that you will enjoy, not the least of which is Sherlock Holmes.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Question about, I'm sorry.
oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say and I don't know how rigorous his commitment to being Superman is going to be, but does that preclude him? Because obviously he dropped out of The Witcher, but would that preclude him from doing this, you think, or no?
I don't think so. I don't think this movie has a really long like filming schedule in general. I don't think the first nor the second one did, and I don't think they would struggle to schedule around his filming availability. There are some big
Yeah,
names in this movie, but he is the biggest name in the movie. They'll make it work. That's just my
yeah.
opinion.
Well, yeah, I'd agree. Also, his very intimidating presence that he kind of has kept like really capitalized on right now with Geralt is still kind of there with Sherlock, so it won't really matter with him still being Superman. It's not like he's going to be gaining or losing muscle all the time, so it won't like with the training thing. And then uh, the first one was also released, I think 2020, the end of 2022, or 2020. So it wasn't like a massive amount of time between these two movies.
And he's not the main star, so that helps too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I
oh,
uh,
go ahead.
I had a question for
Yeah.
you. There was one scene in particular that happens pretty much in the middle of the movie where she walks by and says hello and like, is introduced to a certain character. Um, did you know who it was immediately or no?
When she
When
meets
yeah,
M-
Cecily.
Miss what now?
So when she goes to the ball and she walks in and she's like, people are teasing her about her dress, and then she's introduced to somebody halfway in the movie. I thought it was very obvious and was laughing the entire way through the movie about how she had not put it together who this person was.
Oh, are you talking about
Yeah,
the girl
yeah,
with the fan? I'm trying to find like a
yes.
non-spoilery way to say
I'm
this.
not. I'm trying to say this so we don't spoil it for Carey. Yes, I
The
am
girl with the
trying
fan?
to.
I did not find that
Well,
Yes.
obvious. No.
Oh, okay. Because me and my mom were watching it where we both went, "That's it."
No. I did not find that obvious.
Okay.
Even when they have that whole conversation together and she then introduces that
Okay.
person to another person. Yeah. No. I didn't, but that's because I didn't pay attention to this person's face, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that there are maybe intention this is a lovely person, but I think that there are maybe intentionally a lot of people in this movie who look like that.
Yes. I see what you're saying. I was just curious because I think my brain has, after reading so much stuff in the same genre for a week and a half, my brain was in this setting already of looking for clues, right? Very much Always Sunny in Philadelphia pinboard behind me watching this movie. So I immediately was like, I know.
You know,
I just
sometimes
wanted
I'll
to
say I
say,
can't tell blonde men apart.
yes.
The same applies to the
Okay,
demographic we're referencing here.
that's fair. That is fair. I
With
understand.
respect. Very lovely. But no, I did not. Which is just that is a lack of observance on my part. I, in fact, would not be a great detective, depending on the mystery.
Okay. No, no, I was trying to
The
determine
character with the
if it was
anagram
a
name, where you there's the
Yes.
character whose name can be rearranged. That I picked up on right away.
Okay.
Just because when the
All
name
right.
was said out loud, I was like, okay, I know what they're saying there. But the
Mhm.
other one, the other mystery, Carrie, there's a lot of fun mysteries. You'll enjoy it. Also, none of what we're saying makes any sense. So
There's
this is
several
not a spoiler, I
mysteries.
promise. But
So you don't. I
the
was gonna
other
say you
character,
don't
no,
have to
I
worry
didn't.
about spoilers. You don't have to worry about spoilers because it's like you'll watch a trailer for a movie and then you'll go watch that movie and then like some pivotal scene happens and it's a scene from the trailer and you're like, oh yeah, that happened in the trailer that I saw like a month ago that didn't I didn't so you don't have to worry about that. So
Perfect. Good. Well, let's talk about something that I believe you are watching tonight. Am I correct that the Andor finale is tonight, Carrie? Or was released
well
today,
see
maybe?
it was released today and that's actually the interesting thing. It was episode 10, but surprisingly there are two more episodes in season one.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, here's the thing. I went into it thinking it was the finale myself, and even not spoiling anything, but it's like I went into it thinking it was a finale, and the way it ends, you could sort of feel like it could be the finale as well. It's sort of certainly the end of the say a 2 or 3 episode arc. So there's that. But to my surprise, there are two more episodes for the season, so
I did
it's like
not
a
know
treat.
that. I was a couple
I did.
episodes behind, so I was like, "Oh, it's like I won't be caught up by the finale. It's fine." But I might actually be able to catch up by the finale then.
Yeah, I didn't know it was I didn't know it was two more episodes until after I watched it, and so the it I guess what I'm saying is the ending felt fulfilling, but it
Really?
also leaves you wanting more. So it's like, hey, that's great, and I got two more episodes, so it's like the best Christmas ever.
That's exciting. So we got 2 more weeks, or are they dropping the last 2 in the same week? Do we know?
That I do not know.
Okay.
Um, so yeah,
Cool.
but
So you were satisfied by the end of episode 10. So I'm a couple episodes behind, but I'm totally in favor of spoilers. Are you pretty happy with how the season's going?
yes. And I think we've talked about this before, but what I really like about this show is that it's a Star Wars show in name, but you don't have to be a Star Wars fan to watch it and appreciate it. It's basically a political thriller about oppression and what it does to people on both sides
Mhm.
who do terrible things in the name of what they either feel is right or what they are fearful against. Um, and and yeah, it's what's really strange is some of the quote unquote antagonists. I find myself like wanting good things to happen to them, and it's like, how is that possible, right? I mean, and it's not as visceral as rooting for Darth Vader in like a hallway slicing people away with a lightsaber, because I mean that's sort of like a visual thing and it's quote unquote like almost to a great degree sort of like faceless like people, but these are people dealing with the machine of oppression in a real intimate way, and the people who are getting hurt, the people who are getting destroyed, the people who are getting trampled upon are people you absolutely know and care about, and so that just makes it's been a long time since I watched a series where I felt like you just feel like you can't turn away from it. It's
Mhm.
like when it's on, it's like no phone calls. I'm not texting. I'm not looking away. It's on for like 45, 55 minutes. And I'm watching this and I don't want anything to get in the way of that experience. And, and usually I prefer to watch shows where when it's over, you have this sort of feeling of like, hey, I feel good about the fact that I just watched that. One of the things about Andor is I do feel good about the fact that I watched it, but sometimes you finish it and it's just a lot, you know?
Yeah.
It's sometimes you just have to decompress a little bit. Um, but it's well written, it's well acted. The sets, the visuals, the clothing, all of that stuff is freaking fantastic. And like I said, if you had not watched any Star Wars movie, any animation, not read one book, just getting into this and sitting with these people, these characters, and seeing what they're sort of up against on both sides, it's just engrossing.
Yeah.
Eh, so yeah, I'm digging it, and I'm looking forward to how it ends the season one.
From what I've seen so far, the first, I guess, several episodes, they do a nice job of not over explaining and leaving it to the viewer to kind of make some connections and figure out how one thing relates to another, but explaining enough to where somebody like me, which I've seen, I mean, I guess I've seen all the Star Wars movies, and I, through osmosis, have absorbed a good bit from various TV shows and whatever. But I'm not a like grade A Star Wars fan. I would not win Star Wars trivia, not even close. I'm a fake fan, right? Even for somebody like me, I'm able to keep up with it, understand it, root for characters, kind of have an ability to theorize of what's going to happen, understand the general like morals and themes throughout. So I think that's really cool. I did see some conversation on social media about it. I want to say last week regarding how bold the show is with how they're taking on this. I'm going to call it a social issue, but that's really not the right term. Just kind of societal structural issues and what they're willing to kind of portray and try to make you empathize with.
Yeah, it gets into all that. It's sort of like if you're watching sort of like regular Star Wars, then there's like this space battle that's going on and all this fanciful stuff. This show gets into the heart of like what their day-to-day lives are like, and how there's such dread in it, and how sort of how the machine of oppression is fed, and who feeds it, and why they feed it, and who decides to fight against it, and why. And it's not always altruistic, right? So it's just incredibly interesting to watch all that.
Absolutely. Well, this is typically when I would bring on Kate and ask her about Mysterious Benedict Society or Rosalind, but I think we lost Kate there for a second. So, Kate, are you back? And is it okay to ask you about Mysterious Benedict Society or Rosalind?
I think I am back. The Mysterious Benedict Society. Just real quick, the season 2 has started. It's great so far, but I really want to quickly pitch Rosalind.
Yes,
So
we're listening.
So it's based on Romeo and Juliet, but it's based on the first the character he was basically dating right before the play starts.
Yes.
And it follows her as Romeo and Juliet occurs. And if she were the main character of that story, and how her actions might have influenced or redirected how this play would have gone through. Yes.
Question number 1, is it a comedy?
Yes. So
Sold.
it has a very interesting vibe. The best way I can describe it is they're fully in the historical clothing. It is historical sets. It is historical, like a lot of normal historical fiction feel, completely modern language. There's a moment where she makes fun of a British accent. There is moments where she pretends to have a invisible friend. Like, there are tons of different modern concepts just thrown into this for no reason, for just the fun of it. And I think the best way I can describe the tone is almost like it's actually a high school presentation of the Romeo and Juliet movie, and the camera is just following around the actors while they're off set, and the actress that plays Rosalind is very pissed off because she was supposed to be the senior main actress, and this freshman came in and stole the whole thing. That is the energy of this movie.
I literally could not be more sold. And why have I not
The
like seen this advertised anywhere?
I've seen it a couple times, but I it's not been this huge thing. The reason that got me hooked was I in the commercials there was I saw an actor, Sean Teal. So I was really big into Rain when it first came out on CW. It was
Mhm.
like the first TV show I actively watched weekly. Um, in that show, I hated his character, hated his guts, but I was intrigued to see like where he was, what he was doing now, and I have to say, full 180. This character he plays in this movie, I'm not to be dramatic, but he is my favorite male love interest I've seen in a very very long time when it comes to anything like especially rom com style love interest. Um, he kind of has the to put it in like Austen perspective, it's like if you put Tilney and Knightley together, all the
Okay.
best parts. But I think he has this very he can take as good as he can give to get with her and her kind of fighting him and being against him because this is a very much enemies to lovers type deal, but in the best way possible. Sometimes I have issue with that setup, and I really like it here. Um, and you get to see him basically be annoyed to be supportive of her endeavors in the background of the Romeo and Juliet storyline.
We love an annoyingly supportive man. Or
Yes.
let me rephrase, an
He,
annoyed but supportive man. Be
yes,
annoyed but
he
be
hates.
supportive. That's an elite combination.
Yes, he very much carries the energy of I know what you're doing here is wrong, but I'm going to let you do it anyway, and I'm just going to follow along so you don't get yourself killed. That is who he is.
I love when a male love interest is just slightly annoyed at how much they like the female love interest. I like when they're just a
Yes.
little like, I can't believe I'm wrapped around your finger. Unfortunately, I am, but I'm not happy about
Hmm.
it. Such a good combo.
Yes.
I'm sold. Can't wait to watch this movie.
Hmm. Yes. It adding to the fact also that she kind of carries the keeps doing the wrong thing, not because she thinks it's going to change anything, just because she refuses to change her point for a long time. Uh, she's presented with so many points of proof of evidence that, hey, Romeo ain't your guy. And she's just like, no, 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 he's mine. And she just continues to follow this train of thought until finally she's like, well, wait a minute. This
So
guy's
she's
pretty
either a
nice.
Virgo, a Sagittarius, or a Taurus.
You see, I
Yet to be
don't
determined.
know. You have to be determined. You'll have to tell me when you watch what you assess from watching the movie.
Oh, I will. So let me tell you all about the depressing stuff I watched this weekend. Um, as you may know, at the point of this live, we are 24 hours out of election day ending in the US, but let's not get political. So I just watched the Handmaid's Tale finale for season 5, which is the second to last season of the Handmaid's Tale. Now, before I just haphazardly spoil everything, do either of you currently watch the Handmaid's Tale? If so, are you current, near current? Where are we at?
Haven't
I'm
watched any of it.
seeing some no's. That's fine. Love
Boil
yourself.
away.
It's a very intense watch. And, honestly, you could just watch the news instead. But I marathoned the entirety of season 5 this last weekend in preparation for the season 5 finale, which dropped today or like last night at midnight. And the last season will be season 6. Okay. So let me just tell you about some very fun developments in this latest season. This is not a fun show at all. This is not a comedy. It's not fun. This is a dark drama. Okay. But One of the things that they are leading up to so well that I found so intriguing. Now, this is the second to last season. There is a potential that there might be a bit of there's always like usually a few months between seasons, but this has occurred over the course of 5 years. This show starts, and this is not a spoiler, you see it in the very first episode, with this woman's daughter getting stolen from her. This takes place in sort of this post-apocalyptic world where there's like massive fertility issues. So this hyper-religious sect that basically determines like women must be forced to try to carry kids if they're all fertile, since only a very small part of the population is fertile. It's all within this like super hyper religious structure, and they have like women like in servitude to just have children. I'm explaining this badly, but you get the idea. So this woman who is somebody who can bear children is basically stolen, and they do it under the pretense of like she commits a crime, but this sort of religious sect has taken over. So the fact that she had a child with her now husband, but wasn't husband at the time that she had a child with him, she's basically like arrested on like religious crimes for like violating God's law, whatever, and then forced to become a handmaid. Handmaids have to bear children. Okay, you get the idea. But what's important is her daughter is stolen from her. And at the time that her daughter's stolen from her, I think her daughter is like maybe 8 or 9 years old, something like that. Well, we very rarely see her daughter throughout the season. And when we do, we see like short glimpses. Like we see like one scene per season. The daughter doesn't talk. Maybe sometimes we see the daughter from afar more than like much up close, whatever. However, it's been leading up and they've been aging her up. And I think they might have recast her throughout, but it's kind of hard to tell because sometimes children just look different as they get older as well. But it's leading up to this new concept they've now introduced in the latest season, where again we get glimpses of her, but I don't think we really hear her speak a single word all season, the daughter. This concept of the purples. She is now in training to become a wife, which is like the highest class of women in this like weird religious society. So in this society, you have like the people who have to like work in the colonies, which is basically like drudge labor, die within a couple years. You have the Marthas, which are just servants. It's basically slaves. They have no choice. They are forced to just be like servants in households. There's the handmaids, who are certainly slaves, but they're essentially like sexual and breeding slaves, just to like have children to repopulate this colony. And then you have the wives. Wives are the virtuous women who have like held to whatever the like society's rules, whatever. Anyways, we find out that they have this thing called purples, which up until this point we have not seen, and it's supposed to be super hidden, whatever, where they are training the like virtuous woman to be wives. And we find out that her daughter, who was stolen from her, adopted by an infertile like hyper religious family within this whatever, is now in training to be a purple. And I think next season we're going to see her daughter as like an antagonist, as like the final boss. Like I think she's fully bought in to this society. I think we're going to see her in the highest level of female privilege in this society, where she has been like, she is the princess, she's the right one, she's righteous, she's done whatever. And we're going to see her actually, like, rather than be rescued from this sort of like forced society, she's going to be like advocating for it, and she's going to be like the final bad. Anyways, that's just my theory, and I wanted to get that out there.
I was going to say that usually makes for a pretty good antagonist, right? Because it's like someone you want to take down, but they're a weak spot for you. They're a blind spot for you, right? So you can't unleash everything you'd want on them. So yeah, that could make for an interesting antagonist if they go that route.
Like, what could be more difficult to like rescue or break through than somebody who, yeah, they may see this world as awful, but they don't know anything else because they were so young. But even if they see this world as awful, they've been like, think of like the kind of the, not trying to like throw religion or whatever under the bus, but like people who've been raised to believe that they are the right, you are the good ones and everybody else is awful and you are right, whatever. Like if you've had that ingrained into your head and you're receiving all of the privileges now that you're coming of age associated with virtue, being right, whatever, and you're led to believe this is your inheritance, this is your birthright, having all of these people serve you, being, the top class in society, having everything, everything brought to you on a whim, you're the purples, you're the plums, whatever, like that would be so hard to break out. And they've spent this entire time, these last 5 seasons, a common thread amongst rescuing other people. She's wanted to like rescue her daughter, and by the time she's actually going to get to do it, there's like not going to be her daughter left to rescue. It's going to be somebody else entirely. So excited. Anyway, as Kate mentioned, Mysterious Benedict Society airing now on Disney Plus. I've not watched today's latest episode, but that's been great. I know we've got other stuff we've been watching. I know Stargirl still currently airing the current season. I know, Carey, I think you're still probably watching Walker Indy. I've been watching White Lotus airing now on HBO, which has Aubrey Plaza in it. And I literally don't need to say more to explain why you need to be watching that. It's so good. And Love is Blind. The finale aired today. Almost everybody on this show is garbage. And I think in the reunion, we may have seen a girl held hostage. And I thought that was like a minority opinion on my part. And I was just being like hyper crazy. And then I went on Twitter and saw everybody else also believes that her partner may be holding her hostage, and she genuinely looked like really trapped and scared. And I was like, oh, interesting. So it's not just me. Good luck.
Speaking of Aubrey Plaza, you've heard the new. There is news about her. You've heard that, I'm assuming, right?
What's up?
She was cast in the Agatha Harkness Coven of Chaos.
What?
What?
Yeah.
No, I didn't know that.
I'm
What a
sorry.
perfect fit.
I would have like led news with that. I assumed that you guys would have known that. Yes.
That's fantastic.
I
I saw that the
understand why you would
Heartstopper
have.
kid was cast in it.
Say that again.
The Heartstopper kid, the kid from Heartstopper, I saw he was cast in it, but I didn't see that Aubrey Plaza was.
Yeah.
I'm so excited.
I understand why you assumed, but I don't know how we missed this. It was 8 days ago. How did we miss that?
Between my affinity for Aubrey Plaza and your affinity for all things WandaVision, truly, how did that miss our radar?
I don't know.
Well,
It's
thank you for
wild.
bringing that vital piece of news to
Yes.
our attention. That brought light into my day. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
I think it's
Yes.
still because I'm on my Parks and Recreation kick, and it's sort of like my algorithm for Facebook and Twitter is just feeding me all that. So there you go.
Isn't she fantastic in Parks and Rec? Like, just chef's kiss.
And what's really interesting is I know it won't happen, but if there's somehow like a reference to Star Lord in Agatha Harkness Coven of Chaos, that
Oh,
would
that'd
just
be
be perfect,
funny.
right? Yeah.
That would be so funny. I'm not the
That'd be
biggest
funny.
Chris Pratt fan, but I am a big April and Andy fan, and those two just had such great chemistry, and they did the funniest interviews together, and that was just top-notch era. Well, in terms of reading recommendations, Kate, I heard you read 6 books this week. Do you want to recommend any of them to us as our closing?
I did read 6 books this week. And they were all of the same really specific genre. So I'll just give you kind of a quick rundown. So the first 2 were from a Scott DeQuincy mysteries series, which is an ongoing series. I've just read the first 2 that are published, which follows a woman who just lost her husband and crimes, or basically it comes into suspicion that it wasn't a natural death and murder might have been involved, and the following kind of blowback with that. And then, of course, the second book follows a different mystery, similarly related. And then the second series follows a woman who has just recently lost her husband and now has to investigate a murder. It's the same story. Just I like the second series better. So that one is let me make sure, the Countess of Hartley. Yes, the Countess of Hartley Mysteries. So this one is a rich American heiress. She married this Count of England. He died. Whereas the first series, they were in a happy marriage. This was not a happy marriage. She now is kind of off in London with her daughter, just living it up, has this really hot neighbor, and they start to solve crimes together and fall in love at the same time. So I liked the second series better just because it's a generally happier, funnier tone. But I will say the first series has some of the more wild twists and plot points. But I liked both, and I'm on my way to finishing the entirety of this other series.
Let me tell you when I'm going to need to read these books. When I face the great wash of depression that comes over me when I finish the last episode of season 2 of Miss Eliza and the Duke. That series is single-handedly carrying my mental health on its back right now.
Yes. So I've been watching it with my mom, and we sat down to watch episode 3, and I was telling her we'd have to wait a few days before episode 4 would come on, and not knowing what day it actually updated. And all of a sudden, this 4th episode started playing, and we both kind of got excited, and we sat up in our chairs like, oh, it's good, we get to watch 2 in a row. So sometimes it's great, sometimes it's just pretty good TV, but there's just something about how lovable these terrible people are within this very dark Victorian romance that it just is so heartwarming.
I really need scientists to explain how there's so much serotonin trapped in this show. Like, I love him. I love a Victorian region, like that whole type of thing. But that's not like my one and only era. You know what I mean? Like, I like a variety of things, and in general, I mostly prefer modern. If it's going to be a period piece, I want it to be a good period piece. I like a mystery, but I like other things. I like romance, but whatever. I can't explain it when I try to describe the show. Like, it's good, but it's not like blow your mind. But somehow there's something they've done with this show that's so feel good. It's like, how like people can't explain why they're addicted to cheese, but they're like addicted to cheese, and that's like everybody's comfort food. This show is cheese, and I'm a vegan saying this.
Yeah, I think it because it's so well does all of our favorite, most commonly viewed genres. It is the period drama, but it is the bit of comedy. It is the bit of enemies to lovers, but it's also wholesome, but there's also mystery. Like, it kind of adequately does all of it. So it's just a small hit of serotonin from all of our favorite genres. And it's nothing spectacular. It's nothing 10 out of 10 stars on any of those genres.
Like, it's not going to win an Emmy.
No. But something about how they've interwoven it together, it's just the secret recipe for both of us to just go, I am so happy as we watch people die in mystery
like a moth
drama.
Drawn to the light. I'm just like, I can't explain it, but I need that.
Yes, exactly.
100 out of 10. I made the mistake, and then I swear I'm going to get off this live. Okay, this is no spoilers. I don't know spoilers for the season. I did look at the titles of episodes 5 and 6, 6 being, I believe, the final episode. Do you know what the title of episode 6 is?
I looked it up, but I actively try. I don't remember reading them. I was just there to figure out how long the season was.
Okay. I won't say.
You can tell.
We will reconvene it. The title of episode 6 is The Proposal. He never gave her the ring back, did he? In episode 3.
They never made a scene of it, but she does have it back on her hand in episode 4.
Okay, but he was in possession of it for long enough to know her size. People back then didn't
Yes, if
propose
we
with rings,
really,
though, did they?
they would have them, but it wasn't like a proposal you had to present. It wasn't the
Having
same
him
thing.
in possession of her ring was not an accident. That was an intentional ingredient in this serotonin recipe.
It's one of those things that, well, and it was never specifically stated either who exactly returned it to her, but they had so many other things they could have had her accidentally leave to cause there to be links back to her in this particular crime. uh, they made a conscious decision. They said, we're going to make these two women and just lose their absolute mind over this one unconsequential line about, I can't find my ring.
Let me tell you, the second the word ring was said, the number of antennas that came out of my head, just
Yes.
astronomical. Okay, we're over time. We're going to talk more about Miss Eliza and the Duke in an upcoming in 2 weeks. But in between now and
Mhm.
then, Carey, try watching it and let us know if it has the same moth light effect on you, or if this is an us problem. Or don't try
Mhm.
watching it. You basically know everything at this point.
I'm willing to bet you that that proposal is probably just a setup. It's probably just a business proposal, if nothing else. So you're set up for a letdown.
I know I'm being set up. I know, because there's a whole season 3 and they want to torture us and they can't give us nice things this early. And it's probably best that it's not a proposal because these two always fight. So if they were to get engaged, they would break off their engagement like immediately. And like, I know this, but
Maybe we can interpret it because I agree. I don't actually think it's a real marriage proposal, but maybe we can interpret this as a, I know we every episode basically say we're going to try a new way of working together. And I know every single episode we still fail to work together in a productive way. But maybe this is a new proposal of a way for us to work together in a way that doesn't make him lose his job and her end up in jail on a regular basis.
at this point, I'm starting to maybe think that him putting her in jail or encountering her in jail is like their thing. But let me not judge. I'm not here to kink shame. That's a lie. I'm always here to kink shame. Well, we're overtime. On that note, I will talk to you guys in 2 weeks. Thank you so much for joining me. If you're watching this after the fact, Carey and Kate's information's in the description down below. Go fight with them about their characters' kinks. Have a good week.